Group 16 is arguing against the statement that information technology is improving the lives of people in least developed countries, further referred to as LDCs. While information technology can improve some lives in LDCs, under current global conditions, those benefits are often uneven and unsustainable. We will provide evidence that information technology often deepens inequality, increases dependency on foreign platforms, disrupts local jobs, and exposes vulnerable societies to newer risks.
Let's start by talking about the digital divide. IT can improve some people's lives, but it cannot broadly improve them if most people don't have a reliable and affordable access to it. The 2025 ITU data makes this disparity very clear. Globally, approximately 74% of people are online. In high income countries, internet use is almost universal at 94%. But in LDCs, only 34% of people are online. And in low income countries, this number drops to just 23%. So when people say IT improves lives, we have to ask ourselves, whose lives? Online education, mobile banking, telemedicine, remote work can be useful only for people who actually have access to the internet. If the majority of people in LDCs are offline, then those benefits are concentrated amongst people who already have more resources, like people in cities who have better schooling, who have better electricity, so on and so forth. This should matter because technology doesn't land on a level playing field and instead gets added on top of existing inequalities in society. So instead of automatically reducing poverty, IT can certainly widen the gap between the rich, connected, and the poor, disconnected communities. Even this online versus offline statistic doesn't fully capture the problem. Access shouldn't just be defined by whether a country technically has internet somewhere. Access is meaningful only if people can afford it, use it consistently, and use it well enough for education and work. We argue that affordability is a major barrier. The ITU reports that where fixed broadband is available, it can cost more than a quarter of the average income in a low income country. For many families, that makes internet access a luxury instead of a basic development tool. Device access is also uneven. In low income countries, only 53% of people over the age of 10 owns a mobile phone. And even owning a phone doesn't imply that someone has a smartphone, enough data, reliable means to charge it, or is digitally skilled enough to operate it. The urban-rural divide makes this worse. In low-income countries, only 1 in 7 rural residents are online, meaning that the communities that could benefit most from digital health, agricultural info, and online education are the same communities least able to use these tools. Infrastructure quality is another wedge in this divide. The ITU reports that 4G reaches 93% of the world's population, but only 56% of people in low-income countries. For 5G, the gap is even larger. Our argument isn't that technology has zero benefits. Our argument is that those benefits are unequal. If IT mainly reaches the internet connected minority, then it doesn't automatically improve people's overall lives in low income countries. It creates these pockets of progress while leaving the poorest and rural communities even further behind.
So, whose internet is it really? Who controls the infrastructure, right? So, even for LDC users who are online, the internet they're accessing isn't neutral, it isn't theirs. Google holds a 95% of search market across much of Africa and South America. They have no alternative, right? Foreign tech companies now own the undersea cables carrying African internet traffic. In 2014, they only owned one. In 2024, they own 30, including the cables carrying African internet traffic. Furthermore, Oxford researchers confirmed that this gives U.S. firms, not African governments, U.S. firms, the geo-economic control over the African continent's digital future. LDCs depend on foreign platforms for banking, health, and education, but they have no control over the terms. The dependency suffocates any chance of building anything local, right? A startup in Ethiopia competing against WhatsApp's 3 billion users and Google's 2 decades of dominance cannot win. The playing field is structurally impossible. Africa's internet user base is growing at 40% annually through 2029, but almost none of that growth is captured by local companies, right? LDCs become permanent consumers of technology, not producers. Every ad dollar, every transaction fee, every cloud subscription, that's value leaving the country. If foreign platforms fill every gap, then there's no local innovation to begin.
Well, Thanks for passing that off, Omar. So we've talked about who's online, who owns the pipes, and I want to talk about who's actually keeping a job. And here's the number that should stop you. The IMF says that 40% of jobs worldwide are exposed to AI. And they're literally calling it a new industrial revolution. But here's the thing that matters. Every revolution before this is automated muscle. This one's different because it automates the brain. It automates thinking. Now, that completely flips who gets hurt here. And for decades, the way a developing country climbed the ladder was digital service work, call centers, data entry, back office outsourcing, and automation, right? In fact, the Philippines built a $30 billion industry on it, employing over 1 million people. So guess which jobs AI comes for first? Well, it's those exact ones. The International Labor Organization found that 89% of that outsourcing work is at high risk of automation. And specifically, call center workers themselves have said they are at a high risk of automation. These are the things these countries should be worried about. Now, beyond that, some of you are thinking, but AI also creates opportunity. And sure, but the question's for who? Because here's the catch. The powerful AI sits behind a paywall. And if you can pay, AI makes you faster, sharper, more productive. And the IMF even says your wages go up. But if you can't, you fall behind. UNICEF found paid AI tools are already far ahead of the free ones. And that gap translates exponentially between the rich and the poor countries. It's only growing, it's only widening. The free tiers will continue to get slower while the best tools get locked away, and it's compounding. So with all that, we are pulling ahead while others may be falling behind, and that's something we need to do. So, Sean, over to you.
Thanks, Evan. So we have covered who's online, who owns that infrastructure, and who loses jobs. I want to talk about what happens when the system these countries build get attacked or even used against their own people. Because connectivity isn't just an opportunity, it creates new vulnerabilities, and for the world's poorest countries, those vulnerabilities are severe. In November of 2022, Vanuatu, a small Pacific island nation, around 300,000 people, taken a new government. That same day, ransomware took down every single government computer system. Taxes could not be collected, medical operations were cancelled, parliament, police, the Prime Minister's office were all offline at once. Weeks later, the whole country was running on personal Gmails. It took several months and a cybersecurity team from Australia just to get it back online. This isn't a one-off situation. The ITU's Global Security Index for 2022 found that the average least developed country today is only at the same cybersecurity level as a mid-tier developing countries were at during 2021. They're years behind, already being targeted, and when you have weak institutions and limited resources, one attack can bring down the basic government functions entirely. But the threat isn't always external. Sometimes it's their own government using IT against their own people. Myanmar in 2024, the military junta imposed 85 internet shutdowns in a single year, the most of any country in the world. Access Now's report found that 31 of these shutdowns coincided with documented human rights abuses, and at least 17 directly correlated with airstrikes on civilians. The internet wasn't being cut for security, it was being cut to hide what was happening. And this is part of a bigger trend. Freedom House's On the Net 2025 report found that global internet freedom has declined for 15 consecutive years, with China and Myanmar sitting at the very bottom. So IT is not always neutral. The same connectivity that could improve healthcare or education can just as easily be exploited by outside attackers or by governments targeting their own people. When institutions are weak, technology doesn't become a lifeline. It can become a risk. And that's the way my point differs from everything we have heard so far.